I want to prepare you for the part of theory lessons that you are able to teach as an assistant instructor. And now the theory lessons have there are two things that are really important for me. One thing is, I want you to be really good in explaining things in different circumstances. So sometimes it's just hanging around at the beach that someone has a question, you just have to make this point clear. So Dominic and I are working a lot on providing diving knowledge on a high level, to make sure that any instructor has access to the real knowledge, and a little bit more than what's in the manuals, and always looking around a little bit more. Yeah. And the other point is that to comply with SSI standards, you have to do theory presentations in a very specific way, and we have to train this way of doing it. I will explain you why I think it does make sense, but it's not one-to-one transferable to our daily life. So what we want to do is to integrate these two things. And let's create for us a little bit better pictures than Blondie looking up to this cute guy. When we talk about theory lessons in SSI, you have seen already, or you're experienced it yourself, that you have all this digital learning. That means normally when people start a course, they do have access to their training materials already. They do have access to the course and they read it. So it is not our job to stand here and just tell people again exactly what they have already read in the course. This is annoying. This is not how I learn. This is not how most people learn. So our job is to pick what they've already learned, make sure they did really understand it. This is here with assessment of theoretical knowledge. So when we do our dive briefings, when we explain how things work, we have to make sure that they did understand the critical points. We have to give them the reason why they need all the theory. So we have to connect all this with realistic diving experiences and bring it into some practice. And we can add things that we think are not really, or that need a little bit more explication, or need to be a little bit more focused than what is in the material. So when you read the open water course again, which you will do for your teaching, you will see that it is a very complete material. It's all the content that you need for diving. Definitely, it's complete. But people who do their open water course, they read this all and they understand it, but they usually don't get the point what is really important now, and what is something you should have heard in some moment, but you don't really have to memorize it now. So this is our job, to pick out the very important things and make them interested in learning more and getting their knowledge a little bit deeper. Now, what I'm doing today for a big part is sitting here and talking to you, which is not active learning at all. But there will be active parts once we sit together more and more and more and more, and I will talk less and less and less and less. That's the way we want to go. And we will have a full session about how to create active learning moments and how to integrate them in your presentations. So, but as this is really a bigger part to do, I want to have clear today only this: how does an SSI microteaching work? How does this lecture form work in this context? And give you an idea about this structure. And then we get more into how to integrate activities and how to get your content really right. I will have today a short introduction, and we will watch together one micro-teaching that I have in English and that I think is a very good example about how it can be and shows you like exactly the structure that SSI wants. So we have, normally we have for a short theory presentations, we have about 12 to 15 minutes. So you have to think about how to keep it short, how to keep it on your topic, not tell everything you know about diving, but just this specific thing you want to talk about in this moment. And make sure you get everyone involved somehow. So, but we have our, when we do like the presentation for SSI and for our ITC, this is not always how we would decide to do a presentation if we do it completely free. Because I did send you this evaluation form, and you know that at the end of becoming an instructor, there is an instructor exam, the instructor evaluation, and there you have to do one presentation which will be evaluated with exactly this form. So we will follow this structure throughout our training towards the instructor. So you get really confident with using this, and it will not be a problem for you anymore in the instructor examination. But I want to have like place as well for you to develop things that can serve you in your real daily life, because you will never do a full open water course out of 50 micro teachings. This is not how it's meant. So a micro teaching, you can look at it as not as this is how you do a perfect presentation, but look at it as it is kind of a piece of artwork that you use to show that you are able to follow a structure that is understandable, that is realistic, that is scalable, that does the job, that works, that you are able to sell experiences and to sell equipment, and that you're kind of able to involve the learners, to provide active learning, to use everything that SSI gives you or that you have available to do a good presentation, and as well that you are able to communicate relevant content. This is just a few, very few points in all your evaluation. Like your content does not bring you a lot of points, but your content is what I want to see before I let you pass, honestly. So you can pass the instructor exam with just telling what's written in the manual. You will pass, but you don't pass me if you don't have a little bit more content to offer to your students. But when you're not sure how to get this content, I help you as well to have it, to get the knowledge. Okay, so this mysterious micro teachings are not the way to teach forever, but there is a structure that works. You learn tools that you can use, and you can use the same structure for a very, very long presentation, and it will work. There are other structures that work as well, but this one does. And it's quite nice for people who don't have a lot of experience with doing presentations. If you just stick to the structure, you will have a decent presentation and you will be able to do this. Not everyone who wants to become a diving instructor went to a university or went to school very long or did do any presentations before this in their life. So people start from different points, and from wherever you start with this structure, you can do it. But for sure, we have all this online training. So we don't sit down with our students and do like hundreds of small presentations. selling a new course in every 10-minute presentation and selling a new part of equipment in every 10 minutes presentation. No. What we want to see is that when you do a course, when you do the open water course, when you do other specialty courses, that you know how to engage your students into doing the next course, into what are the dives they want to do next after finishing the course. So they should have a next idea about how to continue already. If it's the next course booked, or already thinking about your next diving holidays, or being connected to someone where they are living to go for a local dive. Everything is okay as long as you get your people engaged, and you don't have to like aggressively sell equipment, but you have to be able that throughout an open water course, people should end up with the wish to own their mask and their computer, at least like something like this. So let's go a little bit like into the one thing that brings you half of the points that you need to pass the exam. And because you get like half of the points are nearly for free when you just follow a very, very simple sequence of how to put it, exactly the way SSI wants to hear it for the highest score. And this is introductions and as well summaries, because the summary is you at the end, before doing anything, before finishing, you repeat kind of exactly the same and you get exactly the other 9 points. So talking about the scores, you have like, you can get like a maximum of 3 in every single thing that you're asked to do, and 0 if you don't even try it. And then 1 if, yeah, maybe you tried it, but it was not really good. And 2 if, yeah, okay, it was a try, but no, there's still something missing. And you will have exactly this. And so you can in every, when you look at this form that I sent you, you see that there are several of this like 3 things, 3 lines packages. And the maximum possible score are 54 points. So in total, it's like 18 different things you have to fulfill. And 3 of this are the introduction, 3 of this are the summary. So 18 of the 54 points you can get in just the introduction and the summary. And to pass the evaluation, you need 36. So you can get half of your points in just the introduction and the summary. And this is why you want this 18 points, because then you can relax a little bit in everything else. So introductions is always like a thing where people tend to struggle. This is why I use so much time for it, because it is simple, but it makes people struggle. It's like in general, it's very easy. You give a measurable learning objective. Measurable for SSI means there must be a number in it. Like name 2 parts of equipment, name 3 ways of doing this. Yeah. The value is really interesting, because like, why do I have to know this is a question that people do ask, and they have all the right to ask it. And then the key points. What will we do today? What will we talk about? Reasonable as well. So how do you get this? I will now go into like a very easy example, like to set you up into how do you find your subjects and how do you get these key points. Then you have like already the first part of the structure for your microteaching. So there is one new thing for you after you finished, once you have the pro level, there is a new view when you open any course, you, on the right side where you have the menu, you will have this Pro sign. And if you turn on the Pro view, your course will change completely because all the pictures are away, and all the long text is away, and there's like just bullet points left, which is like the summary of what you find in this chapter. So here, for example, what is a usual subject for one of the micro-teachings is always in one of the sections, like one of the big chapters, and this is like section 2, all your equipment. And there you have like different chapters, and then you get one of these chapters, which is, for example, the exposure system, means your suits. SSI has this little bit weird names about the exposure system and the delivery system. It's like, we have to live with it. It's like this. Yeah? So, and when you find this, you find like this summary here, the exposure system, then a little bit of knowledge which you should transfer: wetsuit diving, dry suit diving, and exposure suit care and maintenance. And once you see something like this, how do we transform this into an introduction? An objective, measurable from this would mean after this session, you will be able to name the 2 different types of exposure systems or suits, and now know how to do a proper maintenance with them. The value, why do people need to, like, basically you get this from the bullet points of your manual. Yeah? The value is what you have to make up. Like, why do people need to know this? And make it like when you can connect it with safety reasons, with health reasons, that's always the best. And here it's very easy. The exposure system protects you from the cold. You need to be able to choose your adequate protection. This is why you need to know about the different forms of exposure suits. And here you have a perfect value. And then the key points, you usually use what you've seen here, the big points are what you use as your key points. Most of the times, you can just copy this and you have your key points: wetsuits, dry suits, and maintenance. That's it. That's what we will talk about. So this is one example, and you will make up others. This is how the introduction works. And before you will do a full micro-teaching, you will do these small things. You will do some introductions, but I will give you this as a homework at the end. Next point you have to fulfill is like you have to deliver things to fill the diver diamond with life. And that means you have to sell the next diving experience to your students. And in any micro-teaching that you do, you have to sell at least one follow-up experience. Not at least one is enough. Why do we insist so much in this? It has a reason. It's not that we want you to sell the whole time and be the most annoying salesperson ever. No, but we know that most people who learn to dive and who do their open water course drop out. They don't come back to diving. They do their course and then they don't do anything else. And we want to retain more of these people. I mean, we did spend time with them in the water, and it was a lot of effort to get them into being divers. So we don't want to lose them immediately. And this is why we need to do something that makes it interesting for them to continue. And here is where all these small SSI specialties are kind of beautiful for this, because different people have very different interests, and you can offer to everybody what they most like. If someone is really into seeing fishes, seeing corals, ecology things, put them into the next ecology course. They will be happy. If someone really wants to go deeper or do scooter or do whatever with like is a little bit more challenging, we can offer this. So we have really different options for different kinds of people. They just have to know that there is something that is exactly what they want. Yeah. So in every presentation you do, you offer the next experience already, which can be the next course that makes sense. For example, if we talk about exposure suits, you may explain them that, yeah, when they go back to Germany, for example, and it is a common thing for me, or when they go back to England, very likely, if they want to dive there, they will need a dry suit. And you can transfer them to some instructor like Dominic that we know who sits in Germany and who can do the dry suit certification with them or can organize a dry suit dive. So they find out if this makes them happier to keep diving in the winter, and just refer the people to something that makes sense. It doesn't have to be the next course in our center. It can be somewhere else, just that they keep on diving. Then, whatever they do, people who do buy their own equipment are very much more likely to go diving and to keep diving, because it's like one thing less that they have to organize when they want to dive. They can just grab their equipment and go. It's so much easier than when you have to rent. So usually it is a good thing to have people own their equipment. And this is why as well, in every micro teaching we do, we sell a part of equipment. So in this case, very easy, when we talk about exposure suits and about suits, we tell people how nice it is to have your own suit, because this is the one that you did try, and all bodies are different. So once you found the one that fits you really well, it's so much nicer to have your own suit. Or probably you get colder than others and want a little bit of thicker suit than what dive centers usually provide. For example, when you dive here in La Palma, you want at least a semi-dry. But for sure, I will not put semi-dry suits as rental equipment, because they really they get worn out so fast and they are so expensive. I just cannot do it. So you are more comfortable in your own equipment. When we sell equipment, like one thing that we have to take care for is that owning your equipment does not mean the rental equipment was bad. Okay, it just means that your own equipment is even better. Yeah. So don't talk bad about our rental gear, for sure. Yeah, they are just using it now, and it's fine. Yeah, but there's always something that makes. There are choices that you have. When you buy something, you have the choice. When you rent, you take what the dive center has. Easy like that. Yeah. So, I will leave the workshops for a real workshop session that we do, because I want you to have time to think about without the rest waiting in the moment. And it's most of the time it's nicer when we can work a little bit together for this. So we will have moments when we are here together, and when we can do this and just like talk about things. We will do this a lot, but you can start thinking about what to sell, what experiences to sell, what equipment to sell, in which moment. Yeah. So then, in addition to this, you have to include in all of your micro teachings one suggestion for environment and one for safe diving practices. This can simply be something like, hey, it's very important to ascend slowly. This can be something like, yeah, it's very important to maintain proper buoyancy so you don't destroy anything. It can even, yeah, and when we find a plastic bag, we just take it with us. Like some small recommendation that helps for safety and for environment, that gives you points as well. It's enough to have one, but you can have both. Yeah? And then for sure, in the content, before we prepare our micro-teaching, we read again the student version of the chapter. We read the summary in the pro view. We make sure that we teach the whole chapter. It must be complete, but we don't have to read the whole chapter to our students. We have to make sure that they got it. So when we assume that our students did read the chapter before, we can make like a quiz out of just checking if they did read it, if they did get it, and then add something from our part. Yeah, so we don't have to really read down everything. It's up to our creativity to do it in a nice way that does not get boring for a person who did actually read the chapter. I hate to get bored. Like, I'm one of these people, I absolutely hate it if someone requires me to read something and then I come to the moment where we sit together to talk about what we've read and someone starts to read this same stuff to me again. I get absolutely upset because it's like, I can't stand this. You asked me to read it. I did read it. Now let's talk about it. Go a step further. Like, don't treat me like I would not be able to read it. Like, if you ask me, like, is it done? Yeah. So we should cater for kind of people like me as well. And then a little bit aside, like, hey, I've heard all these presentations a couple of times already. So I'm always very grateful if you do a presentation that's still interesting in any way for me, because you make up something that I have not seen in this way. You make me really happy. And when I'm happy and surprised and I'm in a better mood, you get more chocolate. Yeah. There are some things you have to mention, like when you find in one of the chapters something written in this diamond, this is something you have to put in your presentation somehow. So when you are kind of struggling with theory, we are slowly, we have a lot, really a lot in German. Unfortunately, we don't have that much in English yet, but it's getting more and more. And like, I'm really happy when we come to like specific questions and I see that there are things that are like important or where people really have problems with understanding it. We do a webinar for this. It's like, I just have to know what you need and we do it in English, in Spanish. I can do it in Spanish as well. We can do it together in English. We are really happy. So like, ask whenever there's something, when you get a presentation and you find out like, okay, it's in the water manual, it's a little bit annoying that I'm not sure what this means, but I'm kind of struggling and I can't really make this presentation. Ask us. It's absolutely perfect. There's whatever you don't understand, we are really happy to explain. I'm just not happy to get bad presentations and find out in your presentation that you didn't understand anything. So this is annoying. Being asked before is not annoying at all. Yeah, so this. There are some things in the SSI materials that can help you, because when you prepare a presentation, you have the course, you have the student view, you have the instructor view, and you have all this. And here's one thing I want to point out. You have like the full instructor manual, which you have as well like integrated in the course, but you have as well this presentation enhancement guides. You have this PowerPoint presentations for all the courses. Not for every subject they are very helpful, but for some they are. And there are some good graphics and there is some good content. And yes, you can use all this. So when you start to do your first presentations, download all this, check it, review it, make sure you use whatever looks useful for you. So, and now we get into the practical part of it, and we will simply watch one presentation together. And yeah, this is our classroom, and this is Sarah. And in this presentation, she has only me as a student, because yeah, we just did it for exactly to have the video. I uploaded this as well in YouTube, so you will be able to watch it again and again. I will now like play it for you and stop to give you the evaluations. If you sit on a computer and you can open the evaluation form as well, this could be really helpful, because I will try to throw in the evaluation, so you know how we read or how we evaluate this kind of presentations. And for sure, this is a very good example. So this is where you want to get in the next month. So let's get started. This.
This is important because even if it's rare, DCS is a diving-specific risk, and we want to understand it in order to be able to dive safely. We will talk about what is decompression sickness, where does it come from, about prevention, and about the treatment.
So this is, do you hear me? I hope. Yeah. Yeah. This is an absolutely 9-point introduction. When we scroll a little bit back, this is as well a very good recommendation when we do our presentations. You don't have to use PowerPoint. You can use PowerPoint, you can write it down on a whiteboard, you can do whatever to do the presentation, but have somewhere written your objective. Here we have exactly this. We'll have 3 signs and symptoms of DCS. Not you will be able to name the signs and symptoms, but 3. Make it measurable. This is not what I insist, but this is what the certifier wants to hear. We stick to it. Understand at least 3 basic rules to lower the risk. Here you have like the really defined objectives, which means that at the end of the presentation, you will be able to check if your students can fulfill these 3 things and you fulfill the objective. Then we have the value. Why do we need to know it? It's a risk that we don't want to avoid. And here are the key points. And keep this written somewhere, because it helps you as well in the presentation to just go from one point to the other, know where you are in this presentation, and come back to it for your summary. So you don't forget to do your summary. So this is easy like that. And these are full 9 points. 9 points already there.
Okay. Welcome. Remember,
welcome.
what is decompression sickness?
That thing with the bubbles, and like when you're so tired and skin and
I have to go a little
that thing with the bubbles.
Because she did now ask.
You already read the course. What do you remember? What is decompression sickness?
That thing with the bubbles, and like when you're so tired and skin and bent like something hurts after diving.
So here she did, for the first time, include the student. Important thing, like she did assume that I already read the chapter and tries to find out what I understood. So I, as a good student, didn't give her the answer I would have given, but the answer I would expect from a student. This is what you do in the instructor course as well, that you get into the role of a student. But this is like as an interaction with your student. This is the first point she made as well. Wait, continue here.
Right. So yes, it's a disease that can occur after diving, and it does have something to do with nitrogen bubbles in our body, and you already named some of the symptoms. It's important to mention that it's very rare, but sometimes it can happen. So we want to be able to see it. So we look at the symptoms. There is the thing about joint pain, so here in the knuckles or the elbows or the knees, these diving fleas or bends, itchy skin and red skin, and fatigue. The skin symptoms can look like this. They would be painful and a little raised and kind of look like a map. There are other skin conditions, like for example, I have no DCS, right? I always have this. Or you could have a neoprene allergy or something, but if it looks like this, it is quite serious. These symptoms are sometimes underestimated or ignored, but they can be a precursor of heavier and more dangerous symptoms. So if you or someone else has something on their skin that looks like this, please go get it checked. Take it seriously, especially if it's getting worse over time. Because then we can also get more severe symptoms. They also include pain. They include coordination and visual or speech disorders. Can kind of look like a stroke. Also dizziness, and can even lead to unconsciousness. With DCS, this often happens a couple of minutes or even hours after diving, but it's never sure. And there are a lot of different symptoms, so please, when there is anything weird that you have after diving, just take it seriously. So we want to know how DCS happens. There's a little physics involved. We breathe air that contains about 80% nitrogen, which is an inert gas. And while we're on the surface, we are fully saturated. We are in a balance of the nitrogen that is outside of us and inside of us. When we go diving and we descend, the ambient pressure increases. And with the ambient pressure, also all the partial pressures of all the gases that we breathe increase. So the nitrogen partial pressure.
So this was very important. Unfortunately, I have to go back to the presentation up to the folie. Okay, this was very important. You've seen she's doing like a lot of content. Yeah, she's doing great.
Okay,
great
and the ambient pressure,
and
always the nitrogen moves from of all the gases
which is
that we breathe increase.
This one.
So the nitrogen partial pressure increases.
Strange thing with the Daltons going through the picture. This is because in this chapter in the manual, there is something about the Dalton law and Henry's law, but it is not really so useful for us to repeat this law in this presentation, but we need to have it kind of mentioned because it's there. So kind of she mentions it. She just lets the Dalton and Henri fly through the image, and this is a creative way of integrating it. I did show this to another instructor, trainer, and certifier, and for her it was absolutely okay to do it this way because her whole presentation absolutely makes sense. And if we have to include something that would destroy our presentation if we now start to talk a lot about Henry's law, if this is not really what we need here. This is just a nice way of doing it. And I love her for having done this. This is so nice. This is so beautiful.
This is awesome. If we now stay at the depth, our tissues saturate. This means the nitrogen moves from areas with a higher concentration to a lower concentration, and this is called diffusion. So nitrogen diffuses from the air in our lungs, in the blood, and in all our tissues. The amount of nitrogen that will be solved in our body is given by its partial pressure, or the partial pressure of nitrogen in our air. And also tissue saturation.
The same here with Henri. She did explain exactly what the Henri's law means, but without mentioning that this is Henri's law, because we don't need to mention the name of the old white man who did find this law. We have to mention the concept, the content.
In a different velocity, we have different tissues. It depends, for example, on the circulation and on some other factors. And we usually describe them in half times, like minutes or hours. And at some point, we might be fully saturated, which means there is again a balance. And when we start ascending, now the partial pressure outside of us is smaller than inside of us. Well, because the nitrogen that's dissolved in our body stays the same, but the ambient pressure and the partial pressure of nitrogen in the air decrease. So we have again the same process of diffusion, but reversed, which means that our tissues desaturate. And the speed with which this happens is given by the pressure difference. So how much more nitrogen do we have inside of us than outside? And our tissues tolerate a certain speed, a certain pressure difference. And if the oversaturation exceeds this limit, then bubbles might form and they can cause decompression sickness. We can describe this with this M line. So an M value is this information about how big can the oversaturation be with an acceptable risk of decompression sickness happening. We use the no-deco limits for that. So this tells us that if we ascend now directly to the surface, we still don't cross this M line. This is our known decompression limit. This tells us that we will have a chance of 1 to 10,000 or less of getting DCS if we stay inside these limits. This was now very fast for a very complicated topic. So if you are interested in this physics in decompression theory, I can very much recommend you our Punkfish Academy. We do the decompression specialist course, and we also have some more SSI courses like Science of Diving.
Now, this is like the sales part, as you see that like the next courses you should do. So she did get the points here, and I mean the points for the content are clear. They're like minor things where you can say, oh, that you could do this a little bit better, this a little bit better, but we are not that picky on details. That was like quite beautiful.
So there's really a lot more to learn, awesome webinars and explanations. For now, we want to talk about how to prevent it. So first, there are a couple of factors that you can't really change, like your age, your overall healthiness, maybe medication that you're taking, and there's a lot of individual differences that are not fully understood. So it is possible that even if you follow all the rules, you might still get decompression sickness. But still there's a lot that we can do. So we can stay hydrated, we can be fit, we can keep ourselves warm, and we can sleep well the night before diving. Always be honest. If you don't feel well, if you have any kind of symptoms, just talk about it. And make sure you always have something to breathe, your regulator. And ascend slowly. For the slow ascent, I have this nice bottle to show you. So in here, there's a very high partial pressure of CO2 in this case, and there's a lot of CO2 solved in the liquid. Outside, the partial pressure is way smaller. So if I just open it, we all know what happens. Right, a lot of bubbles. Okay, this we don't want to happen in our body. So what we do is we open it a little bit, very slowly, and we give time for the desaturation and for this balance to be restored. Okay.
So oh my God! Once again, the same shit. So what we've had here was this very nice point with the bottle here. There is something in your, you have seen in the evaluation form that there is as well a paragraph about using efficient use of training aids. So Sarah, in this case, this was like the first training aid outside the PowerPoint presentation. She has the PowerPoint presentation, she has this, and you will see in the next part one more training aid, because we need to have at least 3 things that we use for the presentation, which can be a whiteboard and a PowerPoint presentation, and the people using the app, people using their SSI app, it can be whatever you think is a good idea to integrate.
Okay. And another very important thing is to always dive inside your limits. For example, the no decompression limit, and that you plan your dive and then dive according to your plan. How do we know our decompression limits? How can we plan a dive? Please open your app.
Usefull.
Right, you find the no decompression limits.
This is like the second we find the tables in the app and use it from there.
You can see, for example, here for any depth, just the decompression limit as like an overview, but you can also use it to plan dives and even repetitive dives. But we also have our computers, which for me are easier to use. And you already had a rental computer today, this one. Right, so do you remember what kind of data it was showing you today when we were diving?
Yeah, the depth where we are and the no decompression limit.
Right.
And the no decompression limit was like smaller when we went deeper and more than we were shallower.
Yes, right, exactly. And then at the end of the dive, do you remember?
The safety stop.
Right, perfect. This can also help to decrease our risk. And there was
so here there are like 3 things that she's doing in the same moment. We have to look a little bit if this would get all the full points or not, because she gives me the computer, which is a nice training aid, because it's like, hey, you did use this, do you remember? She has a nice she does include me very nicely in her teaching, because she really like asks about today's dive. And she does one more thing that we have to do as well, like for our evaluation, which is including like real dive experiences at every level. So in this subject, as we're already like deep into the open water course, she does talk about the last dive we actually did. If you're on if it's like before even doing the first dive, it's like you can talk about the dive you are going to do with this afternoon, or ask the people for experiences when they went snorkeling or whatever. But you have to take the people from where they are with their experiences and integrate whatever you want to tell them with diving experiences on their level. It does not mean you tell them your latest adventures at 60 meters. It means you talk about yesterday's dives, today's dive, tomorrow's dives, snorkeling, their depth, their dives, not yours. And she gives me the computer in the hand so I can play with it. And I think there will be now a recommendation that owning your computer is quite a smart thing to do, because then you have like all your, you have all your dives locked from the very beginning on your own computer, which is like quite nice to have. Yeah, and she did include here a safety message as well about the safety stop. It was like probably a little bit weak. It can be a little bit more to the point, but it's there. It's a nice safety message which can end up in the evaluation with 2 or 3 points, not 1. Definitely a 2 or 3, and both is perfect. Yeah.
Something else that we can even look up when we go here in the logs. Once more. And now here on the side.
The ascent speed.
Exactly.
Okay, 40 meters per minute. This was fast.
It was
some moment.
faster than it should be, but still kind of okay. And it also shows you this live while you're diving. So it can help you to stay inside the ascent speed limits and also inside the decompression limit.
Safety message.
Tomorrow you can even try some more computers. We have, for example, also this model.
Yeah, that's my baby.
So beside the mask, for me the computer is the very first part of equipment that I want to buy for my own. It's awesome to just know how it works, to be able to quickly use it and understand everything it shows. And well, it can monitor and track all your dives. If you always have the same one, it also tracks your repetitive dives. And you can even download all the profiles and see all the data if you download your dives. So that's very cool.
Perfect sales.
So in case decompression sickness does occur, we want to give first aid. So it is quite hard to properly diagnose, and decompression sickness can also look very similar to lung extension injuries, for example. But luckily, it's always the same that we have to do. So the first thing, if someone comes up from a dive and has some kind of heavy symptom, we always call the emergency services first. This is here and for all of Europe, the number 112. Then, in case the person is unconscious and doesn't breathe, you give them CPR if you know how to. And for all diving injuries, you always give oxygen if you know how to. This is really the most important thing because it doesn't hurt and it helps for most diving related problems. This is also the reason why in our briefings we always say here in the car we have oxygen, because we always bring it with us to the diving spot. There's also, as a treatment, the hyperbaric chamber, where we do recompression. Please never bring a diver back underwater to do recompression, and also don't directly go to a chamber. Call the emergency services and then they will direct you there.
This part of never bringing someone back underwater, she just says it because it is in the manual in a way that in a diamond that you should say it. I think this is kind of outdated now. It was very important in some moment to have this inside every open water manual, like forget about wet recompression, forget about bringing a diver who has decompression sickness back to the water, because like 20 years ago, the godfathers of diving did exactly this, and then it went like people thought this was the way to do. But I think the younger divers, the people who learn how to dive today, don't really need this information anymore because they would not get this stupid idea anymore. I think we are sorted with this, but well, it's still in there. Just if you wonder why this stupid information comes in there, this is because it's in the SSI materials and we have to put it in there. I would not talk about this in a real session with a real student unless they asked me if it would not be nice to just bring the person back down. So.
What are basic rules to lower the risk?
Stable in between the pain and the joints.
Now,
bring a diver back underwater to do recompression. and also don't.
And now what she does is like at the end or somewhere in between, but very nicely to put it on the end, is we try to find out if our student did understand what we were talking about. And this is like to make it valuable for the certifier. We do this, or we like to do this in the way she does it now. She just asks the students the things that she had as the objective for her presentation. She now asks exactly these things to make sure the students got this. And normally you have more students and ask one after the other.
Directly go to a chamber, call emergency services, and then they will direct you there. So, can you now tell me what are signs and symptoms of DCS?
So this pain in the joints and fatigue and like this spots on the skin.
Right.
And more.
Right. These are the mild symptoms, and they can even go up until unconsciousness and neurological problems. What are basic rules to lower the risk?
Stay well in between the limits, slow ascents, and stay hydrated.
Right, like take care of yourself in all ways. And what are the first aid measures?
Oxygen.
Oxygen.
And
right.
normal first aid.
Normal first aid. Right. Exactly. So today we talked about what is decompression sickness, where does it come from, how to prevent it, and how to treat it. And with this knowledge, you are now able to follow the basic rules and do safe dying.
So, and
wir sogar cutten, weil das nämlich eigentlich gerade sehr gut war. Oh Gott, ich hoffe, es hat
nein.
Oh nein, bitte.
Nein.
Nein, bitte hat
Nein.
Nein, fuck.
Nein.
Die Batterie ist alle. Die Batterie ist alle.
Okay, we had two versions of this, honestly. Okay, so this is where I want you to get in some moment, and this is what we will start to train, which means I have a little bit of homework for you to start with, and you just let me know when you have done it, because then we figure out, then we set the date when we can listen to it. I know that Camilla will now be on the road, Marco has a little bit of time, Nas will be changing from Croatia to La Palma as well. So it's like, I don't want to stress you with this, but like whenever you have time, you can like start to think about it, because before I ask you to do a whole micro teaching, I want like a little bit of preparation. And this preparation is that you go through the open water manual again, and you choose 3 subjects from 3 different chapters. So it can be the exposure system, it can be the delivery system, it can be the diving environment, it can shore entries, boat entries, whatever. 1 from 3 different chapters. They're like three different from 3 different chapters. And for each of those, I would like you to write an introduction. Just the introduction, not the full presentation, just an introduction. And then you think about which next course or which diving experience could you include in this presentation? And just write down, hey, with this presentation, I sell the perfect buoyancy course and I explain it this way. Which part of equipment would you try to sell with this? And which would be a reasonable safety recommendation or environmental recommendation? Just this. And once you have this, we will go into, in the next session, we will go into, and how can I integrate some active learning on the things that you did on these chapters that you did prepare.